Jake Morgan woke up with a pounding headache. The last thing he remembered was piloting his cargo ship through the outer rim when something hit his vessel hard. Now he found himself lying on a cold metal floor in a cell that hummed with strange energy. The walls glowed with a faint blue light that hurt his eyes. He sat up slowly and looked around. The cell was small, maybe 10 feet across, with bars made of some kind of shimmering force field instead of metal. Through the barrier, he could see other cells lining a long corridor. In those cells were other humans. Some were sleeping. Others sat with their heads in their hands. A few stared at nothing with empty eyes. Jake was a former Marine who had served 6 years before becoming a cargo hauler. He knew how to stay calm in bad situations. But this was different. This wasn't some pirate raid or colonial dispute. The ship he was on didn't feel human at all. The air smelled wrong, sweet and metallic at the same time. The gravity felt just slightly off, making his stomach uneasy. A woman in the cell across from him noticed he was awake. She was maybe 30 years old with short brown hair and tired eyes. She pressed her face close to her force field barrier and spoke quietly. "You're finally up. You've been out for 2 days," she said. "Where are we?" Jake asked. His throat felt dry and rough. "Somewhere in Valdrisi space. I'm Lisa Hayes. I was an engineer on Colony Station Perseus before they grabbed me." Jake introduced himself and asked the obvious question. "What do they want with us?" Lisa's expression darkened. "They're taking us to Valdris Prime. There's going to be an auction. We're being sold." The word hung in the air like poison, sold, like property, like things instead of people. "That's insane," Jake said, but even as he spoke, he knew it was true. He had heard rumors during his cargo runs, stories about human disappearances in the outer colonies, tales of alien species who saw humans as exotic curiosities. He had always thought they were just stories meant to scare new settlers. "How many of us are there?" he asked. 16 that I've counted. They've kept us separated except for feeding time. I think they're worried we'll organize if we can talk too much." Over the next 3 days, Jake learned the grim reality of his situation. The raiders who captured them worked for something called the Valdrisi Consortium. The Valdrisi were traders who specialized in rare and valuable goods. Apparently humans fit that category. Lisa explained that in this part of the galaxy, Earth was far away and humans were uncommon. Some alien species were willing to pay huge amounts to own one. The guards who brought food were not human. They were tall, thin creatures with gray skin and large black eyes. They never spoke to the prisoners and moved with an eerie silence. Jake tried to talk to them once, but they simply stared at him and walked away. On the 4th day, everything changed. The guards opened all the cells and herded the prisoners into a larger room. There, other aliens dressed them in simple white clothing that looked like tunics. They were given water and food that actually tasted decent. Then they were lined up and inspected like livestock. An alien with purple skin and forearms walked down the line, looking at each human carefully. It spoke in a language Jake didn't understand, but a device on its belt translated the words into English. "These will do nicely. The Empress should fetch particularly high bids. Clean them up and prepare them for presentation." Jake's blood ran cold. He caught Lisa's eye and saw the same fear reflected there. They were taken to another room where they were washed and groomed. Jake's stubble was shaved clean. His hair was cut and styled. They even did something to his skin that made it glow slightly with health. When he looked in the reflective surface of the wall, he barely recognized himself. Then came the waiting. They were placed in a holding area beneath what sounded like a massive arena. Jake could hear crowds above, thousands of voices speaking in dozens of languages. The sound was like an ocean wave, rising and falling in rhythmic patterns. One by one, the prisoners were called up. Each time someone left, the rest waited in tense silence. When they returned, they looked shaken and defeated. Lisa was called 5th. When she came back, she was crying quietly. "What happened?" Jake whispered. "I was bought by a merchant lord from the Tarvine system. I leave tomorrow." Her voice was hollow. Jake felt anger burning in his chest. This was wrong. This was evil. But what could he do? He was one man in a ship full of aliens, light years from Earth, surrounded by technology he didn't understand. Finally, his name was called. 2 guards escorted him up a ramp and through a doorway. The noise hit him like a physical force. He stood on a raised platform in the center of a massive amphitheater. Thousands of alien beings filled the seats, arranged in circular tiers that rose up into shadows. Lights shined down on him, making him squint. An auctioneer stood at a podium nearby. It was a creature that looked like a cross between an octopus and an insect. with tentacles that moved constantly as it spoke. The translator device kicked in. And now, our final item of the day. A prime human male, age 32, former military training, excellent physical condition. This specimen shows remarkable adaptability and intelligence. We'll start the bidding at 50,000 credits. Numbers appeared on screens around the arena. They climbed rapidly as different aliens placed bids. Jake stood frozen, feeling like an animal at a zoo. The bids went higher and higher. 100,000. 200,000. The numbers became meaningless. Then suddenly the arena went quiet. A new bid had appeared on the screens. 5 million credits. The crowd gasped and murmured. Jake looked toward where the bid had come from. A section of the arena was enclosed in dark glass, reserved for the most elite buyers. As he watched, the glass cleared slightly. He could see a figure sitting on a throne-like chair. Even from this distance, he could tell she was different from the other aliens. She was tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shimmer between silver and pale blue. Her eyes were large and luminous, colored a deep violet that seemed to glow. She wore flowing robes that looked like they were made from liquid starlight. Everything about her spoke of power and wealth. The auctioneer stammered in excitement. "We have a bid of 5 million credits from Her Imperial Majesty, Empress Siraith of the Keralian Star Empire. Does anyone dare bid higher?" Silence filled the arena. No one moved. No one spoke. "Sold to Empress Siraith." The crowd erupted in excited chatter. Jake was quickly escorted off the platform, but not back to the holding area. Instead, he was taken to a luxurious waiting room. Within minutes, the door opened and she entered. Up close, Empress Siraith was even more impressive and intimidating. She was at least 7 feet tall. Her movements were graceful and precise. Her violet eyes studied him with an intensity that made him feel completely exposed. She walked around him slowly, examining him from every angle. Jake forced himself to stand straight and meet her gaze when she came back to face him. When she finally spoke, her voice was melodic but firm. The translator rendered her words clearly. "You are Jake Morgan. You served in your planet's military forces. You have survived conflicts and hardships. You are strong in body and mind. It wasn't a question." She was stating facts she already knew. "Yes," Jake replied, keeping his voice steady. A slight smile crossed her alien features. "Good, you do not cower or beg. That is important for what I require." She stepped closer, and Jake could smell something like cinnamon and ozone coming from her. "You are perfect for what I need," she said simply. Before Jake could ask what she meant, guards entered and escorted him away. He was taken to a shuttlecraft and flown up to an enormous ship that orbited the planet. The vessel was unlike anything he had seen before, all smooth curves and glowing energy conduits. As they brought him deeper into the ship, Jake realized his life had changed forever. He was the property of an alien empress, heading to an unknown world for an unknown purpose. The only thing he knew for certain was that she had called him perfect. He didn't know if that was a good thing or the worst thing that could have happened. The journey to Keralis took 3 days. Jake spent most of that time in a comfortable cabin that was far nicer than his cell had been. The room had a large bed, a viewing window that showed the stars streaming past, and a bathroom with a shower that adjusted water temperature automatically. Food appeared through a small door 3 times a day. It was alien food, but it tasted good and filled his stomach. Guards checked on him twice daily. They were professional and polite, but never answered his questions. Jake used the time to stay in shape, doing push-ups and sit-ups in his cabin. He needed to stay ready for whatever came next. On the 3rd day, the ship's motion changed. Through his window, Jake saw a planet coming into view. Keralis was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. The surface sparkled with what looked like crystals and glass. Cities made of towers that caught the sunlight and split it into rainbows covered the continents. Oceans glowed with soft blue light. The ship landed at what was clearly a royal spaceport. When the guards came for Jake, they gave him new clothes. The outfit was made from soft fabric that felt like silk but changed color slightly when he moved. It was more comfortable than anything he had worn in months. They walked him through corridors of polished stone that seemed to pulse with inner light. Other aliens passed by, all dressed in fine clothes. Some stared at Jake with curiosity. Others pretended not to notice him at all. He felt like a strange pet being brought home. The palace itself was massive. Jake saw gardens growing under domed ceilings where plants glowed in the dim light. Water fountains floated in mid-air without any visible support. Alien servants moved through halls carrying trays and packages. Everything was clean and ordered and utterly foreign. Finally, they reached a set of ornate doors that opened silently. Inside was a suite of rooms that took Jake's breath away. The main chamber had windows stretching from floor to ceiling, showing a view of the crystal city below. Furniture that looked comfortable despite its alien design filled the space. There was a bedroom, a bathroom with a pool-sized tub, and even a small kitchen area. "These are your quarters," one of the guards said through a translator. "You may move freely within these rooms. If you need anything, speak to the panel on the wall." Then they left him alone. Jake walked to the window and stared out at the alien city. He was a prisoner in a golden cage. The luxury didn't change that fact. He was far from Earth, owned by an empress, and he had no idea what she wanted from him. He didn't have to wait long to find out. As the sun began to set, bathing the city in orange and purple light, the doors to his suite opened. Empress Sirith entered, followed by a single guard who stayed by the door. She had changed from her auction robes into something simpler but still elegant. Without the crowd and the distance, she seemed more real and somehow more intimidating. "Walk with me," she said. It wasn't a request. Jake followed her out of his suite and through the palace. She didn't speak as they walked, and he didn't dare break the silence. They passed through gardens where night-blooming flowers opened and released sweet scents. They crossed bridges over pools of water that glowed from within. Finally, they reached a private balcony that overlooked the entire city. The sky was dark now, and 3 moons hung overhead like jewels. The city lights below made the whole world look like it was made of stars. Sirith stood at the railing and was quiet for a long moment. Jake waited, his heart pounding. This was it. Whatever she wanted from him, she was about to reveal it. "Do you know why I purchased you?" she finally asked. "No, Your Majesty," Jake replied, using the title he had heard others use. "I will tell you something that few know. My species, the Chiralians, we suffer from a condition. Our minds are powerful, but they do not rest easily. Sleep is difficult for us. When we do sleep, we are plagued by dreams that are intense and often disturbing. The higher our station, the worse it becomes. For an empress, sleep can be a nightmare." She turned to look at him with those violet eyes. "We have tried many remedies, medicines, meditation, technology. Nothing truly helps. But recently we discovered something interesting. Humans have a natural presence that soothes our neural patterns. When a human is near, our minds become calmer, sleep becomes easier, the dreams become less violent." Jake felt relief wash over him. She didn't want him for manual labor or experiments or anything worse. She wanted him to help her sleep. "You want me to be in the room while you sleep?" He asked. "More than that. I want you to talk to me. Tell me about your world. Share your stories. Help my mind focus on calmer things before I rest. During the night, your presence alone should help. But the conversations are important too." "That's it? That's all you need from me?" Sirith's expression was hard to read. "You sound disappointed. Would you prefer I had purchased you for something worse?" "No, I just expected something different." "This seems too simple." "Simple?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You are light years from your home. You have been taken from your life and brought to a world you do not understand. You must spend your nights helping a stranger find peace. This is not simple, Jake Morgan. This is a burden I am placing on you." She was right. The reality of his situation settled over him like a heavy blanket. He would spend every night helping this alien empress. He might never see Earth again, never see his family or friends, never fly his ship through familiar space. But at least he wasn't going to be tortured or killed. At least he could keep his dignity. "I understand," he said quietly. "Good. Then let us begin. Tell me about Earth." They sat on benches on the balcony and Jake started talking. He told her about oceans and forests. He described cities made of concrete and steel instead of crystal and light. He talked about seasons changing, about rain and snow and wind. He spoke about his childhood, growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone else. Sirith listened without interrupting. Her eyes stayed focused on him with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. But as he talked, he noticed something. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. The tension in her posture eased. His voice seemed to have the effect she wanted. They talked for over an hour. When Sirith finally stood, she looked tired but more peaceful than when they had started. This was good. "Tomorrow night, we will do this again. You may return to your quarters now." Over the following weeks, a routine developed. Jake spent his days exploring his suite, exercising and eating the meals that were brought to him. Sometimes he was allowed to walk in certain parts of the palace gardens with a guard escort. He saw other aliens going about their business but rarely interacted with anyone. At night, Sirith would come for him. They would walk or sit somewhere private and he would talk. Sometimes she asked questions about human culture. Other times she just wanted to hear stories. Occasionally she would share things about her own life. The pressure of ruling an empire, the constant political games, the loneliness of power. Jake began to see her as something other than his captor. She was a person trapped by her circumstances just as he was trapped by his. She had power and wealth, but she couldn't sleep without nightmares. She ruled billions, but she had no friends she could truly trust. After their conversations, she would retire to her private chambers, and Jake would be escorted to a small room connected to her bedroom. He would sit there through the night, sometimes reading from data tablets they provided, sometimes just thinking. His presence, she said, kept the worst dreams away. One evening, about a month after his arrival, Jake was walking through a less used corridor of the palace when he heard something unexpected. Someone was speaking English. He followed the sound and found a room where music was playing. Inside, a young man sat at a strange instrument that looked like a cross between a piano and a harp. He was human, maybe 25 years old, with red hair and freckles. The man looked up in surprise when Jake entered. "You're human," they both said at the same time. The other man stood quickly. "I'm Ryan Cooper. I've been here for 3 months. I didn't know there was another human in the palace." They shook hands and Jake felt a surge of hope. He wasn't alone here. "I'm Jake Morgan. I'm here because the Empress needs help sleeping." Ryan laughed bitterly. "I'm here because Lord Craven likes human music. He makes me play for hours every day." "Are there others?" "I think so. The woman I met before the auction said she was sold too. There must be more humans scattered around Corellian space." Ryan's expression turned serious. "We need to be careful about this conversation. The walls might listen, but yes, you're right. I've heard rumors. Maybe a dozen humans in this system alone." Before they could say more, a guard appeared and firmly escorted Jake back to his quarters. But the damage was done. Jake now knew he wasn't the only human here. And if there were others, maybe there was a chance they could help each other. That night, when Sirith came for their evening conversation, Jake noticed something different in how he looked at her. She was still his captor. She was still the reason he was trapped here, but she was also someone who had treated him with more kindness than she needed to. He thought about Ryan, forced to play music for an alien lord's entertainment. He wondered how Lisa was being treated by her new owner. He worried about all the other humans who had been sold at that auction. As he talked to Sirith about Earth's moon and how it controlled the tides, he realized. Jake made sure to walk past the music room every chance he got. It took 3 days before he saw Ryan again. This time they were both more careful. They spoke quietly and kept their conversation short. "I found another one," Ryan whispered. "Her name is Amy Wells. She's a linguist. Lord Varen keeps her in the Eastern Wing to help him understand old texts. She wants to meet you." They arranged a time when the guards changed shifts. The palace had rhythms and patterns. Jake had been watching and learning. There was a 30-minute window every third day when security was lighter in the servant corridors. That's when they would meet. Amy was a small woman with dark hair and sharp eyes. She looked tired but determined. The three of them met in a storage room filled with cleaning supplies. "We need to be smart about this," Amy said immediately. "If they find out we're organizing, things could get much worse for us." "Worse than being slaves?" Ryan asked bitterly. "Yes," Amy said firmly. "I've been translating documents for Lord Varen. Some of them talk about what happens to difficult property. We don't want to find out firsthand." Jake understood. They were walking a dangerous line. But doing nothing felt wrong too. "We need information," he said. "How many humans are in Corellian space? Where are they? How are they being treated?" Over the next 2 months, they built a network. It started small. Ryan knew a palace cook who had seen a human working in the kitchens of a noble estate nearby. Amy met a human doctor during a medical check. That doctor knew 2 others. Each person they found knew someone else. They developed a system for passing messages. Amy would write notes in a code only humans would understand, mixing Earth slang with references to old movies and books. These notes were hidden in places where other humans might work or visit. Slowly, carefully, they made contact with others. Jake learned that there were at least 20 humans scattered across the capital city alone. Some were treated well like he was. Others were not so lucky. There were stories of humans forced to work in factories, reports of people kept in cages and displayed like exotic animals. Tales of those who tried to escape and were never seen again. The worst part was feeling helpless. Jake spent his nights talking to an empress who had the power to change everything, but he couldn't tell her what he knew. Not yet, he needed more information first. He needed a plan. Then one evening everything changed. Jake was in his quarters reading when his communication panel beeped. That was unusual. Normally only the palace staff used it to announce meal deliveries or schedule changes. He activated the screen and saw text scrolling across it in English. Jake Morgan. This is Lisa Hayes. Remember me from the auction? I escaped. I'm with a group now. We're working to free humans from Corellian space. We need your help. Jake's heart raced. He quickly typed a response. How did you contact me? We have someone on the inside who can access palace systems for short periods. Listen carefully. We're planning a rescue operation. We need information about palace security, guard schedules, and where humans are being kept. Can you help? Jake stared at the screen. This was it. This was his chance to actually do something. But it was also incredibly dangerous. I need time, he typed. And I need to know your plan won't get people killed. We're not amateurs. We've already freed 12 humans from transport ships. But the palace is different. We need inside help. Think about it. We'll contact you again in 1 week. The screen went blank. Jake sat in silence for a long time. He thought about Lisa's offer. He thought about all the humans suffering across Corellian space. He thought about Ryan and Amy and the network they had built. But he also thought about Siraith. Over the past months, their nightly conversations had become something more than just a treatment for her insomnia. They talked about philosophy and ethics. They debated the nature of power and responsibility. She had shared things with him that he doubted she told anyone else. She had told him about assassination attempts. 3 times in the past year, people had tried to kill her. She lived every day knowing that someone in her own court wanted her dead. She had confided her doubts about the empire she ruled. The Corellian way of doing things, the rigid hierarchies, the casual cruelty toward other species. She questioned it all but felt powerless to change it. If I move too fast, I will be removed, she had said one night. Change must come slowly or not at all. Jake had wanted to argue with her, to tell her that slow change wasn't good enough when people were suffering now. But he had held his tongue. He was her property. He had no right to lecture her about morality. Now sitting alone in his luxurious prison, he realized something disturbing. He cared about her. Not just as a captor he had learned to tolerate, but as a person. He worried about her safety. He wanted her to succeed in making her empire better. That feeling conflicted with his loyalty to his own species. The next night, Siraith seemed distracted during their conversation. She asked fewer questions and stared out at the city more than usual. Is something wrong? Jake asked. She was quiet for a moment. There are troubling reports. A group of escaped slaves has been attacking transport ships. They've freed several humans and other species. The noble houses are demanding action. Jake's stomach tightened. She was talking about Lisa's group. What will you do? He asked carefully. What can I do? If I do nothing, I appear weak. If I crack down too harshly, I prove that the empire is as cruel as its critics claim. What do you want to do? She looked at him with those violet eyes. I want to understand why beings would risk death for freedom. I want to know if the empire I rule is worth defending. This was it. This was the moment. Jake could tell her everything. He could warn her about the planned rescue operation. He could help her prevent it and save lives on both sides. Or he could stay silent and help his own people. Your Majesty, he said slowly, can I ask you something honestly? Always. If you could end the slave trade in your empire tomorrow, would you? Siraith didn't hesitate. Yes. Then why don't you? Because I would be dead before the decree was written. There are powerful nobles who make fortunes from that trade. They would never allow it. So you're afraid of them? Her eyes flashed with anger. I am realistic about power. An empress who is dead cannot help anyone. Jake took a risk. What if you had proof that some of those nobles were plotting against you anyway? What if the slave trade was being used as a weapon to destabilize your rule? Siraith stood very still. Why do you ask this? Because I think you're stronger than you believe. And I think the people working against you are counting on your caution. She studied him for a long moment. You know something. It wasn't a question. Jake realized he had said too much, but maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time to take a bigger risk. I know that there are things happening in your palace that you're not aware of. I know that some of your nobles are not loyal, and I know that the human slave trade is connected to plots against you. How do you know this? Jake chose his words carefully. Because I've been paying attention. Because humans talk to each other. Because we see and hear things that your own people might miss. Sirith walked to the edge of the balcony and looked out at her city. If what you say is true, then I need proof. Without proof, I cannot move against the noble houses. What if I could get you that proof? She turned back to him. That would be dangerous for you. Everything about my life is dangerous now. They stood in silence. Jake could feel the weight of the moment. He was committing to something that would change everything. Either it would lead to freedom for his people, or it would get them all killed. I need to contact someone, Jake said. Someone outside the palace. The resistance group, Sirith said. It wasn't a question. Yes. And you think they can help prove that my nobles are plotting against me? I think there are connections between the slave trade and the plot against you. I think if we work together, we can uncover both. Sirith was quiet for a very long time. Jake waited, hardly breathing. I could have you arrested right now for treason, she finally said. You could, but you won't. Why are you so certain? Because you asked me what I would do. Because you've been questioning this system for months. Because you're tired of being afraid. And because I think you trust me at least a little. Sirith laughed, but it was a sad sound. Trust. What a luxury that would be. She walked past him toward the door, and Jake thought he had miscalculated. She would tell the guards. He would be taken away. The network would be exposed, but at the door she stopped. You may contact your people. I will arrange for secure communication access. But Jake Morgan, if this is a trap, if you betray me, I will not show mercy. I understand, I hope you do. Because what we're about to do will either save this empire or destroy it. After she left, Jake sat alone on the balcony. He had just committed to helping an alien empress fight against her own nobles. He had agreed to work with the resistance to uncover a conspiracy. He was playing a dangerous game with pieces he didn't fully control. But for the first time since being captured, he felt like he had some agency. He wasn't just a slave waiting to be rescued. He was an active player in something bigger. He just hoped he lived long enough to see how it ended. The next morning, a guard delivered a small device to Jake's quarters. It looked like a simple communication tablet, but when he activated it, he saw it had secure encryption that even palace systems couldn't trace. Sirith had kept her word. Jake contacted Lisa that same day. When her face appeared on the screen, she looked older and harder than he remembered from the auction. Jake, I wasn't sure you'd reach out again. Things have changed. I need to meet with you, in person. Lisa's eyes narrowed. That's a big risk. Why? Because I think we want the same thing. And I think we need to work together to get it. They arranged a meeting at an upcoming celebration. The Festival of Founding was the biggest event in the Karelian calendar. For 3 days, the palace would be open to citizens. There would be crowds, entertainment, and enough chaos that a few humans moving through the masses wouldn't be noticed. Sirith had asked Jake to accompany her to the public ceremonies. It was unprecedented for property to appear beside the Empress in public, but she had insisted. Some nobles had objected, but she overruled them. Jake understood why. She was making a statement and testing loyalties at the same time. The day of the festival arrived with bright sunshine and warm air. The palace grounds were transformed with decorations, food stalls, and performance stages. Thousands of aliens from across the empire filled the courtyards and gardens. The celebration was beautiful and overwhelming. Jake wore formal clothes that marked him as belonging to the Empress's household. He stayed close to Sirith as they moved through the crowds. She greeted citizens and accepted well wishes with grace. But Jake could see the tension in her posture. She was watching everything and everyone. During a musical performance in the Grand Amphitheater, Lisa slipped into the seat beside Jake. She wore a servant's uniform and kept her eyes forward. 2 rows behind you, 3rd seat from the left. That's Duke Kavros. He's the one coordinating the slave trade expansion. We've been tracking his ships for months. Jake didn't turn around. Why is he doing it? Money is part of it. But we think there's more. Some of his communications mention making the Empress look weak. Something about public opinion turning against her because of the slave trade. He's setting her up, Jake realized. He expands the trade, She gets blamed for it and then he moves against her. That's what we think. But we need proof. Hard evidence that connects him to both operations. I can get it, but I need something from you first. What? When this goes down, you can't kill everyone. Some of these aliens are just following orders, and some are trying to change things from inside. Lisa finally looked at him. You're protecting her. I'm protecting people who don't deserve to die. There's a difference. Fine, we'll be as clean as possible. But if shooting starts, we shoot back. Understood. Lisa slipped away as quietly as she had arrived. Jake turned his attention back to the performance, but his mind was racing. He now had a target, Duke Kavros. He just needed to find evidence. That evening, there was a formal banquet in the Great Hall. Hundreds of nobles sat at long tables while performers entertained and servants brought course after course of exotic food. Jake sat at a small table near Saraith's throne. It was another unusual honor that had the nobles whispering. Duke Kavros was seated at the head table with other high-ranking officials. He was a large Chiralian with dark blue skin and sharp features. His eyes were cold and he wore his wealth openly in jewelry and expensive clothes. When he looked at Jake, there was contempt in his expression. During the meal, Jake excused himself to use the bathroom. Instead, he took a detour through the servant corridors. Amy had given him information about where the Duke's personal guards stayed during palace events. If he could access their quarters, he might find something useful. The guard's room was locked, but Jake had learned a few tricks during his Marine days. The lock was electronic, but it had a manual override for emergencies. He used a small tool Amy had provided to trigger the override. Inside, he found uniforms, weapons, and personal belongings. He searched quickly but carefully. In a drawer beneath a guard's bunk, he found a datapad. It was locked, but loosely encrypted. Jake copied its contents to his own device using a transfer program Ryan had modified for him. He was back in his seat before anyone noticed he had been gone. That night, he reviewed the data with Sireth in her private study. The files were coded, but Amy helped translate them remotely through the secure communication system. What they found was damning. Duke Kavros had been systematically expanding the human slave trade over the past year. But more than that, he had been documenting everything. He kept records of which nobles bought humans, how much they paid, and what they used them for. It was a blackmail operation disguised as a business. But the most shocking files were his communications with other nobles. They were planning to present evidence to the Imperial Council that Siraith was profiting from the slave trade. They would claim she was secretly taking cuts from the sales. Once her reputation was destroyed, they would move for a vote of no confidence. In the chaos that followed, Kavros would seize power. He's been planning this for over a year, Siraith said quietly. Her hands shook slightly as she read the files. Half my court is involved. Not all of them, Jake said. Some of these names have question marks next to them. He wasn't sure of their loyalty, which means some of my nobles might still be trustworthy. And it means he's not ready to move yet. We have time. Siraith stood and walked to the window. The city below was still celebrating, unaware that their empress had just uncovered a plot that threatened everything. I should arrest him tonight, she said. No, Jake said firmly. If you move now, the other conspirators will scatter. We need to expose all of them at once. Then what do you suggest? Wait until the closing ceremony tomorrow. All the nobles will be present. You make your announcement then with proof, in front of the entire court and thousands of citizens. They can't deny it or hide from it. That gives them time to discover we know, time to act first. It's a risk, Jake admitted, but it's the only way to be sure we get everyone involved. Siraith was quiet for a long time. Finally, she nodded. Very well. Tomorrow we end this. The next day felt endless. Jake went through the motions of the festival, but his nerves were wound tight. He kept watching Duke Kavros, looking for any sign that the man knew his plot had been discovered. But the Duke seemed relaxed and confident. That evening, the closing ceremony was held in the grand amphitheater where Jake had first met Lisa. Thousands of aliens filled the seats. The noble houses sat in their designated sections, dressed in their finest clothes. At the center of it all, Empress Sireth sat on her throne. Jake stood nearby, along with several guards who were loyal to the Empress. He had asked Lisa to be ready outside the palace with her team. If things went wrong, they would need backup. Sireth stood and the crowd fell silent. Her voice was amplified across the amphitheater. My people, This festival celebrates the founding of our empire. It celebrates our strength and unity. But today I must speak of threats to that unity. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Duke Cavros shifted in his seat. There are those among us who profit from suffering, who trade in sentient beings and call it business, who use this trade as a weapon to destroy the empire from within. Now the nobles were looking at each other nervously. Cavros was sitting very still. I have proof of a conspiracy. Duke Cavros has been expanding the slave trade not for profit alone, but to undermine my rule. He has been collecting blackmail material on noble houses. He has been planning to overthrow this throne. Chaos erupted. Nobles shouted denials. Citizens gasped in shock. Cavros stood, his face dark with rage. This is a lie, he bellowed. The Empress is desperate and grasping at power. The proof is being displayed now, Sirith said calmly. Screens around the amphitheater lit up with the files Jake had stolen. Communications between conspirators. Financial records of the slave trade. Plans for the coup. Everything was there for everyone to see. Cavros realized he was caught. His hand moved to his belt and Jake saw the glint of a weapon. Time seemed to slow. She's armed, Jake shouted. He threw himself toward Sirith as Cavros pulled a pulse weapon. The shot went wide, blasting into the throne where Sirith had been standing a moment before. Loyal guards rushed forward as conspirator guards pulled their own weapons. The amphitheater erupted into chaos. Nobles fled their seats. Citizens screamed and ran for exits. Weapons fire lit up the twilight. Jake pulled Sirith behind cover as pulse blasts hit the stone around them. His marine training kicked in. He assessed exits and threats. More conspirator guards were emerging from the noble section. Then Lisa and her team came through the main entrance. They were armed and moving with military precision. They engaged the conspirator guards, providing covering fire. We need to move, Jake shouted to Sirith. We need to get you somewhere safe. But Sirith refused to run. No, I will not hide while my empire burns. We end this here. She activated a communication device and spoke rapidly in her own language. Within minutes, more loyal guards arrived. The Imperial military, which had been stationed outside the amphitheater, stormed in. The conspirators were surrounded. Duke Cavros tried to fight his way out, but he was quickly subdued. One by one, the nobles involved in the plot were arrested. Jake stood. The meeting took place 3 days after the attempted coup. Sirith had moved quickly to secure her throne. Duke Cavros and his co-conspirators were in prison awaiting trial. Several noble houses had been stripped of their titles. The empire was still in shock, but order had been restored. Now Sirith sat across a table from Lisa Hayes and 2 other resistance leaders. Jake stood nearby along with Ryan and Amy. They were in a secure conference room deep in the palace. Guards stood outside, but inside it was just humans and one empress. You want me to free all humans in Corellian space, Sirith said. It wasn't a question. And criminalize the trade of all sentient beings, Lisa added. Not just humans. Every species that's been treated like property. That's a significant change. Many nobles make their fortunes from that trade. Many nobles just tried to kill you because you were becoming too sympathetic to lesser species, Lisa countered. Maybe it's time to stop worrying about what they think. Sirith looked at Jake. You've been quiet. What do you think? Jake had been dreading this moment. He understood both sides too well now. He knew Sirith was trying to do the right thing while keeping her empire stable. He also knew his people deserved freedom immediately, not eventually. I think you should do it, he said. Not just because it's right, though it is, but because it's practical. You've just proven that the slave trade is a weapon used against you. As long as it exists, someone will use it to undermine your rule. He's not wrong, said one of the resistance leaders, a man named Carl Price. You've removed one threat, but others will emerge. The only way to truly secure your throne is to remove the tools they use. Sirith stood and walked to the window. The city outside was rebuilding. Workers were repairing the amphitheater. Life was returning to normal, but normal wasn't good enough anymore. If I do this, I will need allies, she said. The noble houses that remain loyal will resist. I'll need support from outside the traditional power structure. You'll have ours, Lisa said. But we want more than just words. We want action. Full citizenship for freed humans. Representation in your government. A real voice. You're asking for a revolution. We're asking for evolution. Help your empire grow into something better. Sirith turned back to face them. Her violet eyes were bright with determination. Very well. I will issue the decree today. All sentient beings in Corellian space are free. The trade in slaves is now a crime punishable by loss of title and imprisonment. Any noble found participating will be prosecuted. Lisa smiled. That's a good start. And humans will be offered full citizenship. I will create a new council position for off-world species. They will have representation in how the Empire is governed. We accept, Lisa said. They spent the next several hours working out details. The resistance would help identify where humans were being held. The Imperial military would assist in liberations. A transition period would be established for humans who wanted to return to Earth versus those who wanted to stay. When the meeting finally ended, Lisa pulled Jake aside. You're staying, aren't you? She asked. Jake had been thinking about that question for days. Yeah, I think I am. She needs you that much? It's not just that. I think I can do more good here. Help make sure the changes actually happen. Make sure humans who stay are treated fairly. Lisa studied him carefully. You care about her. Is that so wrong? No, it's just complicated. She bought you, Jake, don't forget that. I haven't. But people can change. Circumstances can change. I'm choosing to stay now. That's different. Lisa hugged him. Take care of yourself. And if things go bad, you know how to contact us. I will. That evening, Cyrith made her announcement. It was broadcast across the entire Empire. She stood in the repaired amphitheater, her voice steady and strong. The Chiralian Empire was built on principles of strength and order, but true strength comes not from dominating others, but from respecting the rights of all sentient beings. Today I declare that the trade in slaves is ended. All beings held against their will are now free. Those who wish to become citizens of the Empire are welcome. Those who wish to return to their homes will be provided transport. The announcement sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Some alien empires praised the decision. Others condemned it as weakness. Within Corellian space, reactions were mixed. Some nobles were outraged and threatened rebellion. Others, who had been uncomfortable with the practice but afraid to speak up, expressed relief. The transition was messy. Over the following weeks, Imperial forces raided estates and freed hundreds of humans and other species. Some went peacefully. Others erupted in violence. Jake worked with the military to coordinate efforts, using the network he had built to locate where people were held. Ryan and Amy chose to stay as well. Ryan became a cultural liaison, helping newly freed humans adjust to life in Corellian space. Amy used her linguistic skills to help establish communication between different species in the growing, multicultural empire. Not all humans wanted to stay. About half chose to return to Earth. The journey would take months, but Sareth provided ships and supplies for the trip. Jake said goodbye to many people he had come to know. It was bittersweet watching them leave, but he was happy they had the choice. 3 months after the decree, Jake stood in a newly constructed building near the palace. It was the first multi-species community center in the Empire's history. Inside, humans, Corellians, and dozens of other species mingled freely. There were language classes, cultural exchanges, and support services for those adjusting to freedom. Cyrith visited the center that day. She walked through the halls with Jake, watching the interactions with interest. It's working, she said quietly. People are actually choosing to come together. It's a start, Jake replied. There's still a long way to go. Yes, but it's further than we were. They walked outside to a garden area. The sun was setting, casting the same orange and purple light Jake remembered from his first day on Corellis. But everything felt different now. I never thanked you properly, Cyrith said, for what you did, for trusting me when you had no reason to. You gave me reasons. Little by little, you showed me who you really were. And who am I? Jake smiled. Someone who's trying to do better. That's all any of us can do. Cyrith looked out at the city. The other empires are watching us. Some with hope. Others with anger. What we're doing here could change the entire galaxy. Or it could fail spectacularly. Then we better make sure it works. We? Yeah, we. If you'll have me as an advisor instead of property, I'd like to help. Cyrith's expression softened. Jake Morgan, I offer you the position of Special Ambassador for Human Relations. You would have an official role in government. A real voice. Will you accept? I will. But on one condition, which is, no more spending nights in the room next to yours just to help you sleep. If we're going to work together, we do it as equals. Sareth laughed. It was the first time Jake had heard her laugh genuinely. Agreed, though I will miss our evening conversations. Who says we have to stop talking? We just do it because we want to, not because you own me. A novel concept. They stayed in the garden as the moons rose. They talked about plans for the future, about the challenges ahead, about their hopes for what the Empire could become. Eventually, a messenger arrived to summon Siraith to a council meeting. Before she left, she placed a hand on Jake's shoulder in a gesture of friendship. Thank you, Jake, for everything. Thank you for listening, and for changing. After she left, Jake stayed in the garden a while longer. He thought about his journey. From cargo hauler to prisoner to property to friend to ambassador. It had been a strange path, but somehow he had ended up where he needed to be. His communication device buzzed. It was a message from Earth. His family had finally gotten word that he was alive. They wanted to know when he was coming home. Jake typed out a reply carefully. He explained where he was and what he was doing. He told them about the changes happening in the Corellian Empire. He promised to visit soon, but not to stay, because this was his home now. Not the palace or the city, but the work itself. The chance to build something better. The opportunity to prove that different species could live together as equals. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, with his old life and his old dreams. But here on Corellis, he had found a new purpose. He was helping to reshape an empire, one decision at a time. A group of humans walked past, laughing and talking in the twilight. They were free people now with choices and futures. Some would stay, some would leave. But all of them had been given back their dignity. Jake smiled and headed back toward the palace. There was work to do tomorrow. A council meeting to attend. Policies to debate. Changes to implement. But tonight, he would rest easy knowing that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The auction had brought him here. The Empress had called him perfect for her knights. But in the end, he had found something more valuable than freedom from captivity. He had found purpose. He had found friendship. And he had found hope that even the darkest systems could change when people chose to do the right thing. Jake walked through the Crystal City as lights began to glow in windows. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tomorrow would also bring new possibilities. And for the first time since that day he woke in a cell, Jake Morgan felt truly free.